Hi, my name is Nikki, and today we are going to be making the Siren Tote by XOXO Lauren using a fabric kit from Name Fabric by LisaBee. This video is not a substitute for purchasing the pattern. The pattern is $1. Go buy it. But this is just to help those of you who are maybe new to bag making to just dive in there and get started. So I'm going to be making a few small modifications that to the pattern, but they're totally not necessary at all. So let's get to it. I am going to be using, as I said, the fabric from Lisa. I have already prepped, I've already cut, interfaced, and prepped everything to get started sewing. I have interfaced all of the pieces with Wovenfuse from gotinterfacing.com. That adds extra stability to the fabric, and it makes it feel heavier. I highly recommend it. If you don't want to order in bulk, Pellon SF101 is comparable, but if you're going to be making a lot, I highly recommend ordering from Barb at Got Interfacing. Her prices, even including shipping, are still less than buying SF101 with coupons at Joann's or Hobby Lobby or wherever. So let's get started. Sorry, doing videos is not my thing, but I thought it would be helpful too. So I'm gonna try. Pattern recommends starting with the straps, and the straps are like the least fun part. So I do like to do the straps first, because then you get to the end of the bag, you're like, oh, it's a bag, oh, but it needs straps. So then you have to do one more thing. So I've taken the straps already and folded them in half lengthwise, and then I folded the edges in and ironed it again, so it's folded so there's no raw edges anywhere except the ends, and we're going to take care of those ends right now. So open them up and fold it in half the wrong way. And this is not in the pattern, but this is how I like to do them. And this is if you're doing them with Lisa's kit or with a regular woven fabric. If you're using a vinyl as one of the suggestions in the pattern, you would not do this. So I'm going to do, I have 2.5 for my stitch length, and I have about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here. Back stitch at the start and stop, and so I sewed the end of that. Now I'm going to snip the corners, being careful not to cut into my stitches, and then I'm going to cut a little V where the fold is in the middle. So that I have two little mountains here. Then trim a little bit off of that. Then I'm just going to finger press these open. Then I'm going to fold it where it has already been folded before. And then I'm going to fold it in. And so I've sewn in that raw edge into the inside. I'm going to do the same thing to the other end and to both ends of the other strap. So now we are ready to sew the straps, to top stitch them. It's worth noting that my strips are narrower than the pattern calls for. That's because I didn't have this gorgeous hardware, iridescent rainbow hardware, in the 1-inch size, so I'm doing 3/4 inch straps so that I can use the hardware that I wanted to use. I'm going to go ahead and increase my stitch length to somewhere between 4 and 4.5 is a good top stitch length. So you're supposed to fold, once again I'm a little different because I'm using narrower strap connectors. So you're supposed to fold both of the edges, both of the long edges into the middle and top stitch down both sides of this. So you're going to have raw edges in the center, but they're going to be covered. And I'm just going to daisy chain onto the next one. Really doesn't matter if you back stitch on these because this seam is going to get caught inside of another seam. My kit, the kit that I got has 2 different color of strap tabs. So I'm just top stitching all 4. Okay, now I'm just going to trim these apart. And I'm not going to be worried about the raw edges because they're all going to be enclosed. So we're supposed to take our, it said these should end up being 1 by 3 inch strips. We need to add our 1-inch hardware. And I'm using these. We're going to add these. And baste the ends. Okay, so I have all my strap connectors basted. Snip those apart. This hardware is so beautiful. You can't even see how beautiful they are. So we're going to take one of our exterior main body pieces, and it says that if we are adding a bling tag or a handmade tag, handcrafted, or if you have brand name tags or any of that, you'd add that now. And I do want to add it right here. I need to add some, so I have Wovenfuse on this and fusible fleece on this. The canvas is heavy enough that you could forego the fusible fleece if you wanted to, but I tend to like more structured bags. So I went ahead and did canvas, Wovenfuse, and fusible fleece. Interfacing is not a fun thing to spend money on, but interfacing will make or break your bag. As far as how it looks and how it holds up. So don't skimp on interfacing. So I will be right back. So, sad news. I just did basically the whole outside of the bag construction, and I was not recording. Thought I was sitting here talking to myself, but I was not recording. So I am not a videographer. So let me recap. I took the side panel, just the side panel, and I basted these strap connectors with the tabs with the connectors attached. Where it says 2, I measured the measurement that it says 2 in the pattern, and I basted them in place. I did that on all 4 tabs, 2 on each side. Then I took the base piece with the Peltex or Decoville Heavy attached. I folded it and found the centers, and then I gave it a little tiny snip in the center of each. I did the same thing with the bottom center of each side panel. I did a little snip, and then I lined those up and sewed with a 1/2 inch seam allowance down this seam, this side seam. I did the same thing on the other side. I lined up the side panel to the bottom and sewed a 1/2 inch down this seam. Then I turned the side and matched the side of the panels and did a 1/2 inch seam down that. The same on both sides. Another seam down here. Then I took the bottom. We had an opening here, and I squished this down, opened the seam, and did a 1/2 inch seam here. This will be repeated in the lining, so hopefully this will all make sense in a minute. I'm really sad, and I've already trimmed seam allowances down, so I can't really tear it apart and refilm it. So I repeated on the other side. Took this, smashed it down, opened the seam, and did a 1/2 inch seam down here. And then I trimmed down to a 1/4 inch all the way around the base. And at this point, the exterior is finished. It says turn your exterior shell right side out now. I'm going to poke the corners. I have a few stray fuzzies. Be really careful when you're trimming down your seam allowances not to go too close to your stitches. You want to get rid of a little bit of bulk, especially down around the base. But you don't want to compromise your fabric. Trim some stray threads there. Back this up. So there is the exterior of my bag. And we will see what comes next. And again, so sorry that you didn't get to see that part sewn together. But hopefully it will make sense when I sew the lining together in a minute. I mentioned that I'm going to be doing a couple of modifications. I'm going to be doing those modifications in the lining. And these are totally optional, but kind of fun. But if you want to stick with a very basic tote, especially if it's your first tote, that's totally fine. I happen to have a little bit of extra fabric. But you could do this with a complementary fabric to your lining. But I'm going to make a little zipper pocket inside. You could do this with any size you want, but this is just a little piece of fabric that I had left over. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to measure 1 inch down, and I have about a ½ inch on either side of this. So this is going to be a 6-inch pocket. I have a fabric pen. Actually, I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch down. So I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch down, and my fabric pen is not going to show up. Okay, so I drew a 6-inch line. I'm going to go down 3/8 of an inch from there. I'm going to draw a parallel line. And I'm going to make a box. Some people do the box, and some people do just the 2 parallel lines. I seem to have a little bit better results with the box. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my lining pieces and excuse me, and this name fabric does seem to have pretty much a direction. So I'm going to make sure which way I want up. I'm going to go down. I'm going to find the center. And I'm going to find the center of this as well. And I'm just going to finger press it. Okay, so find the center, find the center. I think I'm going to go down about 3.5 inches to the top. Yeah, about 3 inches to the top. This is not part of the pattern. This is just something that I'm adding. Okay, so these are lined up pretty much with the centers. 3 inches down from the top here. 3 inches. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to, you want right sides together, and I'm going to, I want a stitch length of 2 for this one, and I'm going to stitch around this box. make sure you have nice pivot at the corners so that you have nice square corners. And back stitch. Okay, and now what we're going to do is cut a Y into the corner, or a V into the corner, and then I should draw this with a ruler because this is not straight at all, but I'm going to do more straight job cutting. I'm going to cut down the center of this and then cut another V into these corners. Cut as close to the corners as you can without actually snipping your stitches. So I'm going to start with the seam ripper just to start a little bit. And then and snip it as close as you can into there. But once again, do not snip your stitches. I normally wouldn't place this under my presser foot while I'm doing this, but I'm trying to keep it in the light because I had to wait till my family went to bed, and I don't have the greatest lighting in here. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to shove this through the hole that we just made, all the way through. Then I'm going to take this over to my ironing board, and I'm going to iron this open, and I'll be right back. Okay, back from the ironing board. Got a few little stray fabrics there, or stray strands. Okay, so I pressed it through, I flipped it through the opening and pressed it. So now we have a little opening right here. So I am going to take a zipper for whatever size of opening you want. You can have a giant pocket, you can have a little pocket. This will be like a little, maybe cell phone pocket inside, or keys or whatever, just a little pocket. It's actually going to play an important role later, but once again, it is optional. It's not necessary. Just something that I chose to do. Is not part of the pattern. So you can use double-sided, like Wonder Tape that they sell at Joann's, to tape your zipper in place. You can forego a zipper and just have a little slip pocket. I happen to have like a fun green zipper that I think will look good in here, so I'm gonna go with it. You do want to watch metal ends and make sure you're not going to stitch over those. And I'm just going to center this in here. Once I get going, it should be pretty straightforward, staying in place. I still have it on a short stitch length, so I'm going to lengthen it a little bit. I'm going to go to a 3. And I'm only going through the zipper and the fabric piece that the one fabric piece that I just sewed in. I still have another piece for the other side of the pocket. That end creeped in closer than I wanted it. Yes, it did. Have to be very careful. I'm going to hand crank this because that end got closer than I wanted, and I really don't want to break a needle. Okay, got past it. Okay, so just line it up here. Okay, so I've gone up one side, across, back down, but I don't have the zipper pull in there yet. So I'm going to leave my needle down, I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I'm going to shimmy this under. It's kind of tricky, and I'm sure there are better ways to do this than what I'm doing, especially because it's not going to work because I'm filming. I've done this 100 times. Okay, so I'm going to come back a few stitches. Just give myself a little bit more room. There we go. So go back to the end again. Okay, and now I'm gonna go over the end of the zipper here. I'm gonna back stitch again and call that good. Okay, so now my pocket has a zipper, but it's not really a pocket yet. That zipper end is going to be a problem for me, I think. I have to be really careful going over this spot right here because I don't want to hit this with my needle. I'm going to hopefully just go right by it, but okay, so what I'm going to do now, put right sides together, and what I want to do is go up, across the top, back down. I'm going to leave the bottom of my pocket open for right now, and that will serve a purpose later. So you want to make sure that the rest of your bag is out of the rest of your panel is out of the way. Okay, and here's where that end is that I want to be cautious of. Okay, now I need to pivot and then pull the bag out of the way again so that I'm just getting the two pieces of the zipper pocket. Go across the top of the zipper pocket. Okay, pivot and pull it out of the way again. I'm going to go back down this last side, but remember, we're not going to go across the bottom just yet. Okay, so now we currently have a bottomless pocket, but it's a pocket. And you can use whatever coordinating fabric you want for this, or contrasting for that matter. So the other, I'm going to go give this a quick press. Okay, so the next little modification that I'm going to do is I want a magnetic snap at the top. So this zipper pocket was not part of the pattern. I added that. And I'm going to add the snap. So I'm going to find the halfway point here. Oh, two more things that I just remembered. When ironing this fabric, remember that you're working with polyester. Do not have your iron set for cotton because you don't want to damage your fabric. I've been ironing on medium heat and everything has worked well. The other thing, if you're doing the pocket and leaving the open bottom for later magic, fold this up about 1/2 inch and iron it. That will make things a little bit easier later. And it is magic later, let me tell you. So 1/2 inch, press that. Okay, so I've just found the center, and I want to come down, let's say 1 3/4 inches at the center mark. And where'd my pen go? Okay. No, really don't want to use a Sharpie. Okay, so 1 3/4 inches at the center mark. I'm going to do a little dot. Okay, so I'm using, using magnetic snaps that have gathered the rest of the hardware that I'll be using later. Okay, so magnetic snaps, here they are. These have a little plastic protector on them. Okay, so the magnetic snaps usually come with these super thin little washers. So I marked where the center hole is going to go. And now I'm going to place this little washer over that, and it becomes my template. So I'm going to mark these little lines on either side. And then I'm going to take a seam ripper. Be really careful with this because it's easy to go too far. So just poke it in and then very gently cut up the length of that little thing that the little line we just drew. Poke it in and go up just a little bit. So now from the other side, find those little slits I just did, and we're going to poke pieces of the snap through. I'm going to take that washer, and I should have said this, I had previously put a little scrap of heavy interfacing here to strengthen the fabric where this snap is going to be, because that's going to be a lot of stress put on that spot of fabric. So this interfacing will take most of that stress so that it doesn't damage the fabric. So then I bend those wings out, and I have a snap piece installed here. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I just had to make sure I was actually recording again. Okay. So I'm going to do, once again, 1 3/4 inches at the center. How do I keep losing this pen? A little dot. the washer. Mark on either side there. Well, that's not centered. Okay, and then take the seam ripper, gently poke it in, easy control. My hand slipped a little bit there, but it didn't get too far. Okay, go to the other side, poke it through. Put the washer on. It's kind of bent. Okay, so put the washer on, bend these prongs down. So now the other side installed, and just for fun here, so I will have a snap closure. Yay! Okay, so now back to the instructions. Okay, so we're going to repeat the exterior construction that you didn't get to see. Okay, so also not in the instructions, but something that I learned from another bag maker that I like. I added a piece of fusible fleece to the bottom of the lining, and that just gives it a little bit of extra weight to keep your lining pulled down. And it's a tip that I really like. Okay, so what I did on the exterior construction is I folded the bottom panel in half, and I gave it just a little tiny snip right here, like about 1/4 of an inch or less, just little tiny snip. And then I repeated that on the other side, just a little tiny snip right here. Okay, then we're going to do that on the bottom of both of the side panels as well. Little tiny snip in the bottom. And one more little snip. Okay, so then we're going to take one of the bottom panels, or the bottom panel, and one of the side panels of the lining. We're going to line up those little snips. I used Wonder Clips. Just need a few of them to hold this while I stitch. Okay, we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the start and stop, and we're going to stitch the bottom to the side. Okay, so in here I'm going to stray from the pattern a little bit again. The pattern says to leave a 6-inch opening along one of the sides of the lining in order to turn your bag through it. I'm going to deviate from that a little bit again. Only do this if you did the pocket in the lining, like I did. If you did not opt to do a pocket in the lining, go ahead and follow the directions and leave a turning hole in the side. But I'm going to leave the turning hole in the bottom of my bag. Ah, sorry. That was not good. It's hard working with a camera this close to the sewing machine. So we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. Just drop some scissors by my feet. Okay, I'm going to back stitch here. I'm going to cut my thread. It says to leave a 6-inch turning hole, so that's not quite it. Okay, so back stitch at the start and stop again. And I am not at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Let's try that again. Okay, so I left an opening here for turning. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, and remember, only leave the turning hole in the bottom if you did the little pocket in the side of the lining. Okay, so now we're going to line up the sides of the panel, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. Okay, so I sewed down the side, and we're going to leave this opening here at the bottom for a minute. We're going to do the other side. And I could pin this, but I'm not. Okay, now you're going to take this opening here, open, okay, let me try this again. Going to take the bottom right here, and this is where the two sides meet. This is the bottom. Open this seam up, and then just kind of smush everything together till it lines up, and it will. The corners kind of do their own little thing, but it all comes out okay in the end. And we're going to give this a 1/2 inch as well. going to turn this and look at it and make sure. Okay. I want to just make sure that that I caught everything. Pretty good. Okay, so now I guess I should have left it. Oh, we can trim down our seam allowance a little bit. Except for the turning hole. Leave that alone. Whether that is on your side seam or your bottom, don't trim down your turning hole. Be careful that you're only cutting through what you want to cut through. Okay, so I stopped there. I'm going to leave this alone. Alright, no, one more. So you just saw how that's exactly how I constructed the outside of the bag. That's what I just did with the lining. Okay, so it says to go ahead and turn this right side out. Okay, and then we are going to insert this inside of... No, I don't want that right. Okay, actually I do. I am going to have the lining right side out, and I'm going to have the bag exterior wrong side out. I am going to insert my lining. It's hard to get a good view of this. I'm going to shove my lining inside my bag so that they are right sides together. Okay, so I have shoved my lining inside my exterior. They are right sides together, so the exterior is wrong side out right now. We want to line up, I want to open the side seams on both the lining and the exterior, and I want to line those up really well. Pop a clip on there. You also want to make sure that your connectors are down inside there. I'm going to start by lining up both side seams first and then work my way around. And clip everything into place. I really like these Wonder Clips. They seem to be a lot faster and easier for me than pins. And with the Wonder Clips, you want the side that's going to be on the bed of the sewing machine to be the flat side. And now I'm going to sew it once again with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. It says to go ahead and go around it twice. Doesn't really matter where I start. Do it 2.5 stitch length. Okay, so I have gone all the way around the top. right sides together. I just realized I never trimmed off my zipper here. Can trim off those ends. I'm going to go ahead and go around the top seam one more time. Now we can trim this top seam down a little bit if we want. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this extra. You don't want to cut down your handle connectors too much, because once again that's a stress point. But I'm going to leave them at 1/2 inch. I think I'm going to leave the top seam at 1/2 inch and not trim it down. We'll see. Okay, now for birthing the bag. So we left this 6-inch hole in the bottom, and honestly I could have left it a little bit bigger than that for a little bit easier time, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to reach in through that hole that I left in the bottom, or if you did not opt for the zipper pocket, you'd reach in through the hole in the side seam, because that would be less obvious. And we're going to start with the bottom, and I'm just going to poke this through and pull it. Some people call it birthing the bag, but we're going to pull everything through this hole. And you end up kind of crumpling the bag up. Just be gentle, but coax the whole thing through. You don't want to tear out any seams, but I'm just going to poke the whole thing through that hole. It looks like such a terrible mess for all that work. But now that outside's outside, look at that. That lines up pretty well. Huh. That's kind of impressive. So poke everything out, and then we are going to shove the lining into the bag. Now we need to work on getting this top seam rolled so that it's the lining's in the lining and the exterior's in the exterior. And then you can press that, or can just kind of work with it and get it rolled out and clip it. I think I'm going to do that. This lining fabric is so soft. I think I want a pillowcase out of it. So my thoughts now that I have it sewn together. I'm glad that I went ahead and did the fusible fleece, because I do like a more sturdy bag. A little bit more structured bag, I should say. Anyway, I'm just going to go around and clip this. Make sure that the handle connectors are pulled out good. And we will go ahead and top stitch this. Oh. Okay, so I have that down all the way around. Got my handle connectors out. So we're just going to start off to the side, I think. Okay, it says to top stitch at 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to do a little bit less than that. I like to top stitch about 4 for stitch length. Okay, so top stitching is complete now. We are so almost done with this bag. And my little snap. Snap. Okay, so we are all top stitched and I am almost out of battery. So I've got to move quick. Okay, so if you did not do the zipper pocket and you have a hole in your side, you're just gonna pinch that 6-inch opening and stitch it closed like this. Just top stitch it. When you look in your bag, you'll be able to see that, but it's in the lining, so it's not that big of a deal. I prefer to avoid that when I can, so that's why I did the zipper pocket. And this is what I said, it was going to be magic. So I have the hole in the bottom of my lining right here, and I could just pinch those together and top stitch it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fish that opening through the opening in my pocket. Just enough. I'm gonna fish the lining back through the opening in my pocket. And I'm going to sew that up. Move it back down to a smaller stitch length. I'm going to sew this up really quick. And now I can trim this down to the rest of what the rest of my lining is on the bottom. Okay, so poke that back through that pocket hole. Now I need to pull the lining out of just the zipper pocket lining. And remember, I had you fold that in earlier. So now we're going to pinch this and sew this, but this is going to be inside the zipper pocket that nobody really looks that closely at. So only you are going to know that this is where the seam is. Okay, poke the zipper pocket lining back in, corners down, there we go. We can zip that zipper pocket up and put the lining in. Okay, the lining is in. And now, let me double check the instructions, but I think there is only one thing left to do, and that is our straps. Okay, so we've made our straps ahead of time. We got that out of the way to begin with, because this is the part where you really want to see the reward of your finished bag. So, what you can do is you can See if there's a side you like better on the straps than the other. Put those through, and it says pull it up about 2 inches. And you can sew this in place with a box, or you can rivet it. I'm going to rivet it because I like rivets. Rivet, rivet. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna do what she said. No, I'm just gonna do 1 rivet in each because these are my precious rainbow rivets. Actually, if you're doing vinyl or leather straps, sewing them is just like, it's impossible. Unless you have an industrial machine. Oh, yuck. That looks yuck. Maybe I don't want to sew them. So I'm just going to compare them, pull them up. Okay, so I had planned on doing 1 rivet in each one. And you want to make sure that your strap is not twisted. I do the folded up part toward the inside, not the outside. So I'm going to, yeah, I think I'm going to shorten this. And I have this leather punch, so I just punched a hole in it, and then I'm going to insert a rivet, and then put the cap on it, the other side. I'm going to pick out my stitches here on this one because I don't like how that looked. But if you don't have a rivet press, you don't need it. You can just sew a box, like the instructions say. Just gonna just eyeballing it to see if it's roughly where my other one is. Through the cap on, and I'll go through and set these with my rivet press. Again, making sure that my handle is not twisted. There. Fold it up. And there we have it. All I need to do now is to set my rivets. So I will take a picture of it in the daylight, but she is done. And I like it. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions.